All right, guys. So DNC day 3. I'm going to break it down for you in detail. So, first of all, let's talk about like the little side things that they did. So you had Kenan Thompson came out and did this like Project 2025 bit where he was carrying the entire Project 2025 book, and he had people, call in, and he would explain how the policies are going to impact their lives. And I mean, that was good. I mean, he delivered it as well as he could. It was a little bit cheesy, if I'm being honest, but I think it got the point across that, like, hey, there's a lot of really horrible stuff in here. They want to ban no-fault divorce and ban IVF and ban pornography and take away LGBTQ protections and end overtime pay, like ban overtime pay. There's so much in there that's horrible. I think they got the point across on that. I got to be honest, overall, except for the very end, the Tim Walz speech, overall, I would say this was probably the weakest night so far of the DNC. Maybe you could say the first night also fit in that category. Like, they're competing for which night was the worst, night 1 or night 3. Obviously, the night that had Michelle Obama and Barack Obama, you got the biggest pops in the audience. It was the most electric night, I would argue. So we'll get to the Walz speech in a second. I'll give you a big clip from it, and we'll break it down. But Hakeem Jeffries spoke on day 3, and this is where I begin to see my big differences with like the resistance liberals. Is I saw a bunch of praise of Hakeem Jeffries' speech. I think he's a terrible public speaker. I think he's also in like the negative charisma camp. So I don't know what those people are talking about. Bill Clinton delivered a speech, and all I have to say is he seems really fucking old now, man. He seems really up there in age. He knows he's up there in age. He definitely lost the juice. I think in the entire speech, and it was a long speech, he had maybe one line that I thought was good, where he was talking about Trump, and he was like, what is his obsession with Hannibal Lecter? I don't understand it. What does he mean when he says the late, great Hannibal Lecter? Like, I literally don't get it. I don't understand. That was probably his only best line. I also hate the fact that the Democrats invited Jeffrey Epstein's bestie to be on stage. I mean, if it wasn't for Bill Clinton being a major figure in the Democratic Party, Democrats could go out there and argue that, like, Donald Trump is a pedo and Donald Trump was besties with Jeffrey Epstein. But they took that issue off the table and neutralized it because they want to deify a guy like Bill Clinton, who, of course, is incredibly problematic, both for his personal life, but also for, his history of corporate centrism and neoliberalism and helping to gut the American middle class. So Bill Clinton's speech was very poor, in my opinion. Nancy Pelosi gave a speech. Yet again, I was reminded as she was speaking that this woman is just a power political player behind the scenes. Her power comes from the donor money. Her power comes from her connections to other Democrats. Her power comes from her Machiavellianism. So it's not necessarily that she's like the greatest public speaker in the world, but that's really not the source of her strength and her power. Her power is in cutting the backroom deals and whatnot. And we saw a lot of that recently. She's one of the main reasons why Biden was able to step aside. She effectively, her and Obama sort of twisted his arm and kind of made it happen. All right, then we have Josh Shapiro gave a speech. Now, again, this is where I see my massive differences with resistance liberals, because I literally cannot get over the fact that he ripped off Obama's style 100%, right? I'm sure if you hand me his speech and I just read it on paper, I'd say, okay, this is a pretty decent speech. He kind of leaned into the theme of freedom and how the Democrats are representing freedom and the Republicans are taking it away. I think that's certainly a fair argument, but the way he delivers it, his style is, to me, is just unbearable. It's insufferable. Within a minute or two, I'm like, Jesus Christ, this guy is a 50-something-year-old dude. He doesn't even know who he is because he's been copying Obama's style his entire life. So I have major issues with it. But again, this is where my big differences come out with resistance liberals who were just over the moon, and they thought Josh Shapiro, oh, this is going to be a future president someday. This guy is amazing. This guy is incredible. Really? I see him as dollar store Barack Obama, and it's really concerning to me. And that's apart from his policy record. And of course, the things point to he supports charter schools, which is not a left-wing position. He said horrible things about pro-Palestine protesters and compared them to the KKK. We had Pete Buttigieg gave a speech. And yet again, I was reminded of what I didn't like about him in 2020. Because I'm telling you guys, whenever Pete is on Fox News and he's debating and he's jousting with some conservative host, I think he does a great job. I think he's really quick on his feet. He's really witty. He makes really good points. But when you put him up there and he has to give a speech, all of a sudden, the smugometer gets turned up and it's off the charts, right? And so I was reminded of, oh, okay, this is why I felt like I felt about him in 2020, quite apart from the fact that he was very anti-Bernie Sanders and all that stuff. It's not for me. It's not for me. But again, I saw plenty of resistance liberals who were like, this guy is amazing. This guy's going to be president one day, no doubt about it. Okay, so then we get to the main event. So before Tim Walz spoke, you had a Minnesota student of his came out and told basically stories about him. And take a look at this. So apparently Tim Walz took another job coaching middle school track and basketball to get more money to pay off a kid's lunch debt. And then, of course, as you all know, when he became governor, he made school breakfast and school lunch for kids completely free. Universal free school meals. And so when I heard that, I was like, God damn. And by the way, this kid who was a Walz student was just adorably dorky, right? Just so dorky, but in like a very sweet Minnesota kind of way. And he was just basically explaining how, look, this guy's the real deal. He's just a nice guy. He just cares about other people. As a politician, he just tries to improve people's lives. And so I actually really enjoyed it, even though I understand it's kind of cheesy. I enjoyed it. They brought out like his winning football team, which also was kind of adorably dorky. You had these like overweight guys who are now in their middle age, and they're like, you know, they're out there like, yeah, Tim Walz. So, then we get to the Walz speech. Now, I'm going to come back to that in just a second. But before I do, let me talk about the other big story of the night, in my opinion, which is the uncommitted movement, which, of course, didn't vote for Biden in the primary because they wanted to pressure him on the issue of Gaza. Hey, stop sending money and weapons to Israel. They're committing a genocide. It's our family members who are getting murdered on a regular basis. So they voted uncommitted to try to put pressure on Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. So the uncommitted folks, they were in talks with the DNC and in talks with the Kamala Harris people. Can we have the Palestinian American speak? Right? And it even got to the point where they sent a list. And on the list was all of these names, and they allowed the DNC and the Kamala people, you guys can pick the Palestinian American speaker. And the way it works up there is like all these speeches are kind of vetted. It's not like, you know, you get to put it in and just go up there and shoot from the hip. They want everybody to more or less stay on message, right? And so there's like all these layers of bureaucracy and red tape and trying to make sure that there's message discipline up there. And so they say, look, all we want is a Palestinian American speaker to talk about the plight of Gaza. And here's a list. You guys can pick who it is. And even on the table is they'll talk about what's going on in Gaza, and they'll even, you know, say kind words about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and, you know, it'll be just another speech, except on the very important issue of the human death toll in Gaza and the crisis in Gaza, right? Well, guess what? They were rejected. So delegates from the uncommitted movement and their allies launched a sit-in in protest Wednesday outside the DNC after the party refused to honor the request for a Palestinian speaker and didn't let them take the main stage to speak about Gaza. Now, apparently at the last moment, they were trying to stop the sit-in, and so Kamala's people went to them and said, look, what can I offer you? Look, let's have a meeting. Let's talk this out. But again, they were holding fast of no speaker. And so they're doing a sit-in. Now, look, honestly, what this was here was a test. It was a test of a potential Kamala administration. And the test is, okay, here we're going to play by all your rules, right? We're going to play by all your shitty rules. We're going to give you a list of Palestinian Americans, right? We're going to make it palatable, but we want a Palestinian American on that stage. And by the way, I should point out there was like a hostage member's family spoke at the DNC that same day. So you have the Israeli perspective, the Israeli hostage perspective up there, and nobody batted an eyelash at that, and everybody was fine with it, right? But for the Palestinian American, they jumped through all the right hoops, the uncommitted movement and Palestinian Americans trying to get on the stage. They gave them a list, and they still said no. It was a test of a potential Kamala Harris administration. Okay, if you can't agree to these terms, as soft as we are with this, what are the hopes that you're going to change the policy vis-a-vis Gaza? What are the hopes that you're actually going to break with Biden's administration and either cut off the weapons to Israel or credibly threaten to cut off the weapons to Israel? And look, they got their answer. The answer is it is very unlikely she will, right? Now, I hope they're wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, and I hope she does. I hope she does. But so far, there's really no reason to believe. Now I think the meter is tilting a little more this way on the side of she's probably going to continue the Biden policy. If you can't even have a Palestinian American voice heard to both endorse Kamala and talk about what's happening in Gaza and say, hey, we need to cut off the weapons to Israel. So of all these speakers, not a single one has said or been able to say, let's cut off the weapons to Israel. The best we got is we need to end this war and to get a ceasefire. That's the best we got. Nobody said cut off the weapons. The way you get that ceasefire is to cut off the weapons. Because Israel doesn't want a ceasefire. Netanyahu doesn't want a ceasefire. There's the elephant in the room. Everybody knows this if they're being honest. So look, my heart is with the uncommitted folks. I hope they allow a Palestinian American to speak, and I hope the Palestinian American also gets up there and says, cut off the weapons to Israel. Right? I mean, personally, I'd go further, say arrest Netanyahu, bring out the war crimes charges, right? That's what I would say. That's what I believe in. I'm sure many of them do too. But at the very least, we can and should have somebody on that stage who's Palestinian American who says, hey, no more weapons to Israel. And also, hey, here are good things about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, etc. So this was a test, and the DNC and the Kamala team failed that test. We have to be honest about that fact. Okay, so now let's get into Tim Walz's speech. And look, calling a spade here, he freaked it. He freaked it. He's just as good, if not better, than what I thought. I'm not going to show you the whole thing here, but I'll show you a whole bunch of it. And there are a bunch of lines that you'll see stick out. Here we go.
We passed paid family and medical leave.
Boom. Right. I did this good thing for people. That's really good and everybody loves it. Paid family and medical. That's it. That's all you got to do. Just bring that up every single fucking day from now until the election, and the Republicans are going to be shitting themselves and pissing themselves.
We invested in fighting crime and affordable housing. We cut the cost of prescription drugs and helped people escape the kind of medical debt that nearly sank my family. And we made sure that every kid in our state gets breakfast and lunch every day.
First of all, listen to that crowd reaction. And this is a guy, a Democratic governor, who actually was like, how about I just do the things we talk about that we say we believe in? And this is the reaction. It's going to keep getting better, too. Watch.
Other states were banning books from their schools. We were banishing hunger from ours.
Oh, that is such a good line. While other states, red states, were banning books from their schools, we were banning hunger from ours. Oh, that's devastating. Somewhere in the country right now, J.D. Vance is sitting in the fetal position with eyeliner running down his cheek from his tears.
We also protected reproductive freedom because in Minnesota, we respect our neighbors and the personal choices they make. And even if we wouldn't make those same choices for ourselves, we've got a golden rule. Mind your own damn business.
This was happening throughout the DNC. You really had Democrats leaning into this notion that we're the ones who believe in freedom and the Republicans are authoritarian. They're against freedom. And it's really working, I have to say.
And that includes IVF and fertility treatments. And this is personal for Gwen and I. If you've never experienced the hell that is infertility, I guarantee you know somebody who has. And I can remember praying each night for a phone call. The pit in your stomach when the phone had rang, and the absolute agony when we heard the treatments hadn't worked. It took Gwen and I years, but we had access to fertility treatments. And when our daughter was born, we named her Hope. Hope, Gus, and Gwen, you are my entire world, and I love you. I'm letting you in on how we started a family.
So, as you can see there, Gus, his son, is crying. He's also pointing at Tim Walz and saying, that's my dad. That's my dad, as tears run down his face. I'm getting a little choked up talking about it right now. Guys, Gus has some mental health issues. So there's reporting that he's autistic, he has ADHD, he has some issues learning. So look, he's a little bit spectrumy. But oftentimes with folks like that, they have a harder time sort of containing and controlling their emotions and putting on a face to the world as internally you have those emotions going on. And so in a sense, it's like he's wearing his heart on his sleeve. And look, that's the reaction when you have a loving family, right? When the kids really love the dad and the dad really loves the kids. Like, that's what happens. And so super, super touching moment. Guys, you're not going to be surprised to learn that now conservatives are attacking Gus Walz for crying. I mean, it's so loathsome. It's so, Ann Coulter was out there doing it. I saw a bunch of other right-wing commenters, online doing it. I haven't seen anything from J.D. Vance or Donald Trump. Maybe they were smart enough to sort of not say it publicly, even though I'm sure behind the scenes they were saying it. But just It's like when the accusation against you is that you're weird, and then you turn around and call a loving family weird, you're kind of proving the point, aren't you? Like, the dad loves the son and the son loves the dad? What is this, bro? I'm not used to this. We hate each other in our family.
I'm letting you in on how we started a family because this is a big part about what this election is about. Freedom. When Republicans use the word freedom, they mean that the government should be free to invade your doctor's office. Corporations, free to pollute your air and water. And banks, free to take advantage of customers. But when we Democrats talk about freedom, we mean the freedom to make a better life for yourself and the people that you love. Freedom to make your own healthcare decisions. And yeah, your kids' freedom to go to school without worrying about being shot dead in the hall. Look, I know guns. I'm a veteran. I'm a hunter. And I was a better shot than most Republicans in Congress, and I got the trophies to prove it. But I'm also a dad. I believe in the Second Amendment, but I also believe our first responsibility is to keep our kids safe.
I mean, this guy, man, this guy's fucking magical. Call it what it is. This dude is fucking magical. That's the exact right position. Now, I've always said I'm a moderate on the issue of guns, but what that means is I'm for all the basic regulations. If you're a law-abiding citizen and all that stuff, no worries, you're allowed to have a gun. We do have a Second Amendment in this country. Now, the interpretation of it varies from person to person, and there's different ways of reading it, etc. But I'm in favor of the Second Amendment, but you have to have universal background checks. You have to have red flag laws. You have to, ban assault weapons. You have to have some sort of a reasonable testing system. You have to be able to take guns away from people if they're in the midst of a psychotic break and they're out there saying things like, I am going to shoot up the school. Who could argue for no, let that person, they should be allowed to still have that gun? What? Are you mental? What are you talking about? So, and he has the exact right position, and he has the credibility to make this point because he is a hunter, right? He was in the National Guard. His point is, guns for law-abiding citizens, no problem, but let's not be stupid. I just, amazing.
That's what this is all about. The responsibility we have to our kids, to each other, and to the future that we're building together, in which everyone is free to build the kind of life they want. But not everyone has that same sense of responsibility. Some folks just don't understand what it takes to be a good neighbor. Take Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Their Project 2025 will make things much, much harder for people who are just trying to live their lives. They spent a lot of time pretending they know nothing about this. But look, I coach high school football long enough to know, and trust me on this, when somebody takes the time to draw up a playbook, they're going to use it.
Wow. That's totally true.
And we know if these guys get back in the White House, they'll start jacking up the costs on the middle class. They'll repeal the Affordable Care Act. They'll gut Social Security and Medicare. And they will ban abortion across this country with or without Congress. Here's the thing. It's an agenda nobody asked for. It's an agenda that serves nobody except the richest and the most extreme amongst us. And it's an agenda that does nothing for our neighbors in need. Is it weird? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's also wrong. And it's dangerous. It's not just me saying so. It's Trump's own people. They were with him for 4 years. They're warning us that the next 4 years will be much, much worse. When I was teaching every year, we'd elect a student body president. And you know what? Those teenagers could teach Donald Trump a hell of a lot about what a leader is. Leaders don't spend all day insulting people and blaming others. Leaders do the work. So I don't know about you. I'm ready to turn the page on these guys. So go ahead. Say it with me. We're not going back.
He's got that audience wrapped around his finger right now, bro. By the way, I forgot to mention at the beginning of it, he takes a shot at J.D. Vance for going to Yale, And the right fell right into the trap. Oh my God. They were all like, why is he against success and higher education and making something of yourself, bro? Oh my God, you idiots. How are you this dense? No, the point, taking a shot at him for going to Yale is like taking a shot at him for being a venture capitalist, right? This is a guy who postures like he's for the working class and like he's against the establishment. But this is a guy who wouldn't commit to supporting a higher minimum wage. This is a guy who's against the PRO Act. This is a guy who says he wants a higher child tax credit, and then he wasn't fucking there to vote on the higher child tax credit, which means he doesn't support it. So he only supports billionaires. So the criticism here, the Yale criticism is, you're an elitist. You're not anti-establishment. You're not pro-worker. You're an elitist. And it's 100% accurate. And all the Republicans are playing professionally dense. Like, bro, why is he attacking him for going to Yale? I don't even understand. For the same reason that somebody who's supposedly anti-establishment and pro-worker on the right would attack a Democrat for going to Yale, is to paint them as out of touch and elitist and concerned more with the wealthy and corporations than for regular working people.
Something better to offer the American people. It starts with our candidate, Kamala Harris. From her first day as a prosecutor, as a district attorney, as an attorney general, as a United States senator, and then our vice president, she's fought on the side of the American people. She's taken on the predators and fraudsters. She's taken down the transnational gangs, and she stood up to powerful corporate interests. She has never hesitated to reach across that aisle if it meant improving your lives. And she's always done it with energy, with passion, and with joy. We're down a field goal, but we're on offense and we've got the ball. We're driving down the field. And boy, do we have the right team. Kamala Harris is tough. Kamala Harris is experienced, and Kamala Harris is ready. Our job for everyone watching is to get in the trenches and do the blocking and tackling. 1 inch at a time, 1 yard at a time, 1 phone call at a time, 1 door knock at a time, 1 $5 donation at a time. Look, we got 76 days. That's nothing. There'll be time to sleep when you're dead. We're going to leave it on the field. That's how we'll keep moving forward. That's how we'll turn the page on Donald Trump. That's how we'll build a country where workers come first. Healthcare and housing are human rights. And the government stays the hell out of your bedroom.
He's killing him. He's killing him. All right, I got to show you one more. This is the one where he says literally like, hey, clip this and send this to your undecided relatives. So here we go. Ready?
So this is the part, clip and save it and send it to your undecided relatives so they know. If you're a middle-class family or a family trying to get into the middle class, Kamala Harris is going to cut your taxes. If you're getting squeezed by prescription drug prices, Kamala Harris is going to take on Big Pharma. If you're hoping to buy a home, Kamala Harris is going to help make it more affordable. And no matter who you are, Kamala Harris is going to stand up and fight for your freedom to live the life that you want to lead. Because that's what we want for ourselves, and it's what we want for our neighbors. You know, you might not know it, but I haven't given a lot of big speeches like this. But I have given a lot of pep talks. So let me finish with this, team. It's the fourth quarter. We're down a field goal, but we're on offense and we've got the ball. We're driving down the field. And boy, do we have the right team. Kamala Harris is tough. Kamala Harris is experienced, and Kamala Harris is ready. Our job for everyone watching is to get in the trenches and do the blocking and tackling. 1 inch at a time, 1 yard at a time, 1 phone call at a time, 1 door knock at a time, 1 $5 donation at a time. Look, we got 76 days. That's nothing. There'll be time to sleep when you're dead. We're going to leave it on the field. That's how we'll keep moving forward. That's how we'll turn the page on Donald Trump. That's how we'll build a country where workers come first. Healthcare and housing are human rights. Woo. And the government stays the hell out of your bedroom.
It's so good, we just watched part of this twice, and it didn't even bother me.
That's how we make America a place where no child is left hungry, where no community is left behind, where nobody gets told they don't belong. That's how we're gonna fight. And as the next president of the United States always says, when we fight, when we fight, when we fight, thank you. God bless.
Brought the house down, man. Brought the house down. Just, I mean, imagine she picked somebody else. Oh, that would have been a disaster. Everybody would be feeling so differently right now. That would have been such a disaster, holy shit. No, but she did it. She picked the right one, and that absolutely is paying dividends. Only the weirdest freaks have criticisms of this speech. Everybody else is like, you know, that was fucking really fucking good, man. That was a barn burner of a speech. And remember, guys, it would be one thing if he had this like folksy demeanor, this down-to-earth guy approach, but his record wasn't stellar. But the reason why this strikes me as incredibly authentic, like this is just who he is because he doesn't just talk the talk, he literally walked the walk. And you've heard me go through his record 1,000 times. And I enjoy doing it every single time because it's like, oh my God, these things are possible. These things were done in Minnesota. These are things Tim Walz did in Minnesota and other things he voted for when he was Congress. But universal free school breakfast for kids, universal free school lunch, legal marijuana, carbon-free electricity by 2040, tax rebates for the working class up to $1,300 if you make under $150,000 a year. Some of my favorites, 12 weeks paid family leave and 12 weeks paid sick leave. He banned gay conversion therapy because it's a fucking scam. He did red flag laws for guns because if somebody's saying, I'm going to go shoot up the school, you should probably go take their guns and that should be legal. Universal background checks for guns, automatic voter registration, free public college for the middle class, ban on the PFAS, the forever chemicals, $2.2 billion increase in K-12 school funding, sectoral bargaining for nursing home workers to raise their pay. In Congress, he opposed the Wall Street bailouts in 2008. He ran against the Iraq War. On 2 separate occasions, he fought the establishment and the deep state and the neocon warmongers when they wanted to go to war with Syria. He was there to say hell no, and he fought against it every single step of the way. He voted against outsourcing deals. He codified Roe v. Wade, did right to repair, 100% rating from Planned Parenthood, banned non-compete clauses. Right? The list goes on and on. Do I really need to raise the minimum wage for small businesses, et cetera, et cetera? Raise taxes on corporations, massive Minnesota infrastructure bill, increase construction worker pay. The dude's the real fucking deal, bro. The dude's the real deal, and this was a phenomenal speech. The energy and the vibes are still there. I wish the DNC and the Kamala team were smart enough to keep riding the vibes and have a Palestinian American speak and have a Palestinian American say the obvious. We got to cut off the money and the weapons to Israel. I mean, if you had a Palestinian American take the stage and state the obvious, say, we got to cut off the money and the weapons to Israel and we need this to end now, then this would probably be one of the best conventions of all time, right? Because all the other vibes are on point. But of course, there's that great moral stain and that moral failing on the DNC right now for not talking about the most urgent, pressing issue of our time, right? And so all I can say is keep applying the pressure, keep applying the pressure, keep applying the pressure. Change the political reality on the ground right in front of them so they feel like we have no choice but to go along with standing up to Israel, cutting off the money and the weapons. We got to do it because you can't just sit back and watch a genocide happen and be totally okay with it. I mean, that's just as disgusting as it gets. So, and remember, Donald Trump's out there promising to be worse on the issue of Israel, promising to allow Israel to annex the entire West Bank and turn the West Bank into another Gaza and do another campaign of annihilation over there. So there's no doubt Donald Trump is more extreme, but that just means take the people who are closer to you, Kamala and Tim Walz, and keep pushing. And, you know, as I said, my heart goes out to the uncommitted folks. I think they're doing the right thing every step of the way. And overall, I would say the night was, apart from the Tim Walz speech, it was one of the weaker days of the DNC, but Tim Walz really delivered. Oh, and did I mention Oprah? I think I forgot to mention Oprah. Oprah spoke last night as well. And the thing about Oprah's speech is she didn't really say much of substance. She had one point that was substantive, talking about desegregation and the history of that, and told a very touching story about that. But then the rest of it was just like, I'm for common sense and decency, and I'm for respect, and I'm for people who can get the job done and be competent. And all. She took one shot at the childless cat lady's comment from J.D. Vance, which was a good shot. But outside of that, she didn't really say anything. But even so, it was kind of a good speech because she's just phenomenal at public speaking, right? You could see why Oprah became Oprah, because she wasn't even saying anything particularly substantive, but you were still like hanging on every word. It's kind of amazing when people have that X factor when they speak and you're just like, you can't help but listen. And Tim Walz definitely has that shit, because this was definitely an absolutely phenomenal speech. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.